Last week, I asked for viewers submitted topics, things that my viewers wanted to hear me talk about and discuss. And one of the suggestions I got was to discuss whether I think university is worth it for writers and people who want to become writers. I went to university studying film studies and screenwriting. That was about 2.5 years that course lasted. And that might surprise people who've been watching for a while because I often mention that I'm actually writing a book, and I'll usually talk about the prose writing process. It's actually because I went to university studying screenwriting that I decided I wanted to go into writing prose. Initially, before going to university, my what I really wanted to do was to go into like TV show running and to be a TV showrunner, to create TV shows and to write the scripts and stuff and to go for like 4 seasons and that kind of thing. To just be sort of like Vince Gilligan, that sort of thing. But it was in the process of studying that I came out of it deciding, you know what, I'm going to go into writing novels. Because I didn't just learn about the actual script writing process, although I was kind of familiar with that anyway. Um, but I learned a lot about the industry and about how things actually work. And that's what made me decide screenwriting wasn't my number one priority. What appealed to me about screenwriting was the ability to create my own characters and tell my own stories. And I suppose the reason I decided to study screenwriting and not creative writing is because I didn't think I was a very good creative writer. I didn't think I was very good at writing prose fiction. And with a screenplay, that was something that I found much easier to think about because it has a very rigid structure where it has a template, you have to fill that template. And if you can do that, you can basically fill that template with anything. Whereas with prose, it's basically entirely up to you. And I found that very intimidating. But it was through studying screenwriting that I learned how things work in terms of pitching and selling screenplays and the actual production process. And I realized this is not the kind of mess that I want to get into at all. And also, it's because one of the things about university is that your lecturers will actually engage with you on a more human level than teachers will in school or college. When you're in school or college, you're basically a student. You are there by law. It is a place for you to be educated by the state based on the curriculum. Most of you do not want to be in that situation. At university, it is not mandatory. You're there if you want to be, and you're only studying what you want to study, and your lecturers are people who actually have experience in that thing. I remember one of the lecturers I had was actually so much of an expert on one particular film that they have contributed to the voice commentary on the Blu-ray for the film that I have in my collection. And there was another one who had written sketches for, I think it was Mitchell and Webb. I think they had written some Mitchell and Webb sketches. They actually have experience. They have been out in the field, as it were, and they will engage with you on a more human level, on the understanding that you're here because you want to be, because you're interested in this topic. They'll actually talk to you as an individual and not just as someone who they are employed by the state to indoctrinate. And I know there's a lot of discussion about whether or not university is worth it at all. I think it is completely wrong to say that only the STEM subjects are worth studying. It reminds me of what Mr. Keating says in Dead Poet Society. I don't know if I remember the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of uh, science, engineering, noble pursuits, and necessary to sustain life. But art, poetry, romance, these are the things we keep living for, which is why they're called the humanities. And I know that a lot has been said about the humanities, and to be honest, a lot of it's true. The things about the political agendas and all of that sort of thing, that is basically true. But the thing is, though, it didn't really rub off on me because I was there to study the subject, because I had an interest in studying the subject. There was so much stuff said about politics when I was doing it. I learned a lot about the other students. I realised quite quickly that most of them were not there because they actually wanted to study screenwriting. They were there because they saw it as a platform to express their identity politics, and that they weren't really interested in the writing process. They just wanted a place to campaign. A lot of the stuff that's said about the humanities and what it's become is kind of correct. But I came out unscathed because I expected that, and I recognised it when I saw it, and I just ignored it. Now, you might say that was the wrong idea. Maybe I should have spoken out against it. But the thing is, I wasn't there for them. I was there for me. If they are there just to espouse their ideology, fine. I've no interest in telling them not to do that. But I was there basically for the subject that I was interested in, and I still am interested in. Every year, when the Academy Awards announce their nominations, I'm always the most interested in the screenplay categories. Like, I watched Conclave when it came out, and I've been reading the book of Conclave recently. Not because the Pope just died. That's just a coincidence, actually. But I think it's a really good adaptation. In fact, I think the film improves on the book in certain ways. Mainly the fact that, I mean, okay, yes, the characters' nationalities in the film are different, but that's because it's a Hollywood film. You're going to have, like, Americans and Brits in there. In the book, though, most of them are Italian, and they have Italian-sounding names that are quite similar, and I keep getting mixed up between who they are. In the film, they decided not to pretend that they're Italian, and they've changed their names to something more accurate to the nationality that they have in the film. That was one of the things I thought was better about the film version. So, it is still something I'm interested in. Despite all of the shit that's in academia, particularly in the humanities. Like, I remember this one time on one of our early modules when we were in first year, one of the assignments we had is that, well, before you can really write a feature-length film, you have to learn how to write a short film, because then you'll learn pacing and structure and how to tell an effective story with fewer pages. And I decided to write a short film about something that I knew would be controversial and contentious, and I completely expected a lot of the feedback I got that was basically saying that they weren't actually engaging with the writing. Because the whole point of this exercise, when we do table reads, we write a short film, we bring in the script, we do a table read. Different writers will read different characters' dialogue, someone will read the description, and then we'll feed back. We'll go around the table, do that, and then we'll feed back. And I knew mine was going to be a controversial topic. Part of it was the fact that I realised I was surrounded by people who were here basically because they were, and I know how this is going to sound, they were basically activists, they were basically radicals. And I thought, right, okay, I'm going to write something just to piss you off. I've never really said that out loud before, but that was my main motivation, to write something controversial that I knew specifically would annoy them, just to see how they react. And of course, they reacted exactly the way I expected them to react, which was the whole point of the activity of writing the short film was that we would then feed back on how the script was written. For instance, the pacing. Is the description clear enough? Is there too much of it? Is there not enough of it? Is the dialogue realistic? How does it sound? Is it believable? Are the characters different enough from each other? You do the thing where you put your hand over the character's name and you just read the dialogue. Can you tell which character it is just from the dialogue? That kind of thing. But they weren't there to talk about that. They just wanted to criticise me for the subject matter, and I'm not going to say what the subject matter was because I don't think that's important. But they just didn't care to actually engage with the script. How well had I formatted it? That sort of thing. Was it coherent? Could they picture the film in their head as they were reading it? But instead, they weren't interested in how it was about what it was about. It was just for them about what it was about at all. It wasn't how well have you written this, it was more you shouldn't be writing about this. The actual topic is something that you should not be writing about. And that's not for them to decide because there is no rule. And I had specifically written it sort of as an early first year module test of, okay, is this really the case here? Is what's happening to the humanities, so we're told, is that really happening? Yes, it was. And the scripts they were writing were very much not about anything. They had nothing to say. To them, it was all very safe things, like ninjas and stuff. And like ninjas are cool, sure, but it's just the actual scripts they were writing. They had nothing to say because they didn't want to write about anything in case it was too contentious. So instead, they just wrote bland genre fiction that I could find anywhere. None of it was about anything they personally had to express. None of it was about their experience as a human being. None of it was about the way they saw the world. It was just very safe stuff. Which is why it's even more mystifying to me that so much of the stuff that came out of their mouths was political. And I just didn't get it. And none of this was from the teaching staff, though. The teaching staff, to their credit, never actually criticised me for what I was writing about. Which is exactly what I expected, because they are actual industry veterans. So, and I guess it's because they've been around for longer, perhaps. That was eye-opening. Then there was the other time when we were supposed to write a treatment for a short film. And there was this one student who admitted out loud that they had just thought of the idea on the train to class. What they had written was just a Back to the Future knockoff. It was so obvious it was a Back to the Future knockoff, just in terms of the subject matter and things were in the story. Very specific things that you could only think of if you liked Back to the Future specifically. There were also some students who hadn't seen Back to the Future, even though they were studying film. And I just didn't understand that. They just didn't think it was important to have actually seen some of the most iconic films ever made. Because to them, it's not about the subject. They just see it as a platform. They're not in it for the love of film. So there's that. Just the arrogance of thinking that they don't actually need to have seen a lot of movies in their life. You don't actually have to be a fan of movies to want to study film studies and screenwriting. I find that interesting. Then there was this one time. Here's an interesting thing. So one of the short films I wrote, this was a different one. I brought it into class and we did the table read, and this must have been like the first thing I wrote on the course at all. I'm fairly sure it must have been. Where what then happened after we did the table read was they fed back to me, and it's not a very good script, and I know it's not a very good script. I came across it not long ago when I was clearing some stuff out, and I decided to just bin it because I don't care. I know it's not a good script. It's not a script I will ever care about again at all. There were a lot of obvious plot problems, like the tone was very strange. In some ways, it was a sort of quirky British comedy. In other ways, it was a straight-up drama about real issues. Some of it was just way too sensational. And parts of it, they couldn't really tell what the main characters' relationships were. And I think all those criticisms are true. That was the big eye-opening thing. When I'm listening, I'm thinking, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay, yeah. The tone is very off. We've got like these two comedy characters. We've got like this double act, and then there's also this very serious like social drama happening at the same time, and that sort of thing. But it was the first script I wrote for the course, so I honestly don't care about it now. But the thing is, that went on for the entire class. We did the table read, and then for the rest of the class, they all fed back to me all the negatives, all the criticisms. And while those criticisms were valid, and while I kind of agree with them, the reason that it lasted so long and that the rest of the class, after we did the table read of my script, the reason that the feedback kept coming for the rest of that week's class is because I was the only one to bring in a fucking script that week. Even though we were supposed to, I was the only one that did. So that was a big thing I learned when I was studying screenwriting, that a lot of the competition just isn't there. You have much less competition than you think you do. These students aren't actually bothered. They don't really care. And that was very motivating when I realised, oh shit, there are significantly fewer people wanting to do the thing I want to do than I thought. That is quite relieving, actually. I do feel more optimistic now to see just how unbothered people who say they want to be writers actually are about writing. Almost none of them actually will do the fucking writing. They will talk about wanting to be a writer, but they won't actually do it. And now, whenever I do struggle to feel motivated, or I'm not feeling particularly inspired, or oh gosh, dang it, I just I mean, I'm gonna be sort of knocking off in a few hours anyway, so why start now? You know, whenever I get into a rut like that, I just remind myself that one time I was the only one to bring a script into class. If I think that I'm lazy and that I'm not making enough progress, well, I am at least doing literally any writing at all. And that's not the same thing you can say for those people. And it's probably still true now that most people who talk about wanting to be writers are not actually doing the writing, which is the one basic thing, you know, like a writer writes. The clue is in the title, writer. fucking write something. It doesn't even matter what it is. You become a writer by writing literally anything. Anything. Literally anything. And they couldn't do that. They couldn't actually write one fucking thing. And that was a big eye-opener. I wouldn't have had that experience if I hadn't gone to university. That was a very formative experience, I suppose you could say. But I suppose the big thing that happened was when we were doing our second year tutorial, the thing where it's the start of a new academic year, your first class of that week, you all just gather together and you basically just have a sort of big informal chat with your tutors, just as one big class. And at this point, we knew that our that what we'd write at the end of our third year wasn't a dissertation, but we said we're supposed to write a TV pilot rather than a dissertation, because it was a screenwriting course, so we get graded not on writing a big essay, but on writing an actual TV pilot for submission at the end of our third year. And so at the during our second year tutorial thing, it was basically a chance for us to ask any questions, any question at all. And you had students asking this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I casually decided to mention, do you think it's too early to start writing our TV pilot? Because I already have. So it was like a 2.5 year course. So the third year was basically half a year. This was the beginning of the second year. And I decided to just get started on the TV pilot that early, because I figured that would give me more time to rewrite. More drafts means more chances to make it better. And the reaction I got from some of the other students was wild. It's like, you started writing it now? Like the script that's due in like 1.5 years, you started writing it now? Yes, because I already know what it's about. So, I want to be a good student. It's what I'm here for. I don't think taking 1.5 years to write something is a bad idea. Just get ahead of the game a bit. And I could tell they hadn't even started thinking about that. It's just like, okay, right, this is going to be an actual TV pilot. It has to be like 60 pages long. Like 60 actual pages long. Do you really want to write that in your third year? Which is only like half a year. And half an academic year. So not even 6 months. Are you sure you want to take that risk? Trying to write like a 60-minute TV pilot that's actually good in your third year? I mean, you might be able to write one draft, but not many more, because you will have other modules to do, which we did. And I decided, if I know that's what the assignment is, I'm going to start now. It's kind of like in a role-playing game. You've got the quests that you need to do immediately. You've also got one other quest that requires you to basically collect so many items or whatever. That's something that you are thinking about when you're doing the short-term stuff, so that when you get to that bit, you're not then having to basically spend hours grinding. You've already done it. That's a gaming analogy there. But it's the same principle. And we went on a writer's retreat together. We went on a residential weekend where we just sort of did various writing exercises, and we talked about what it was we were thinking about writing. It was just a chance for us to go out just into the Peak District and just sort of be on our own for a bit and just get some writing done. And I loved it. I thought it was great. But the script that I was working on was the thing I had started at the beginning of the second year. And I still think it's a really good idea. It's very high concept. It's very complicated, and I could turn it into a book at some point, but I think it's beyond me at the moment. It's just so high scale. There are so many different layers. I mean, it's kind of like the Matrix. There's also a lot of like biblical stuff in there. There's like some dystopian things. It's all got multiple different layers to the story, lots of different perspectives. There's sort of a twist about halfway through because there's a sort of unreliable narrator, even though it's in third person. But the way it's been structured has sort of hidden this twist. It's kind of like what they did in Westworld. But man, that script took almost everything out of me because I was in way over my head. I was writing something way, way above what I was capable of writing because it was just way too ambitious. I mean, it was like a Christopher Nolan film. And I was trying to do it as like a 60-minute pilot. And the pacing was all off and everything. I mean, there was some Simon and Garfunkel stuff in there. There was some My Chemical Romance stuff in there. There was so many things that I just wanted to like sort of vacuum pack into one script, and it was just insane, and it was just a mess. But that's after writing several drafts of it. I still don't think I wrote enough. But I started on it a year and a half before it was due, and that's how I ended up winning a certificate at my graduation for being the most outstanding student on the course. So I guess if there is a moral to this story, it's that university is a wasted opportunity for most people. It depends what you want out of it. If you're actually interested in the subject, go for it. The people teaching you will be actual industry professionals. It doesn't matter what the other students think. Most of them are not taking it as seriously as you are. Most of them are not really bothered. If you're actually interested in the subject and you're just the sort of person who is just going to do the work that's required, I say just go straight for it. You do not have as much competition as you think you do. You'll realise just how lazy most of the other students are, and that when they say they're interested in the subject, they're not really. They just like the idea of doing the subject, but they're not actually interested in pursuing it. You will discover you are more capable than you think you are. And by the end of it, all of the cynical criticisms of modern academia will likely be confirmed, I would think. But if you're going in there with the intention of actually studying the subject, instead of seeing it merely as a platform, then that won't really affect you, and it won't rub off on you. And in years to come, you'll be the one who's actually succeeding because you were the one who was interested in the topic and actually wanted to be a writer professionally as an adult in your life, instead of just seeing it as a forum. I don't know what those other students are doing now, but I can't imagine they're doing well. I mean, they have probably found something, but I wouldn't expect they have actually done the thing that they were training for. I don't really have a roundabout way of finishing this, as I often don't, but hopefully you'll have found something in there that you can get something out of. If you were wondering whether you should go to university to study writing, so that was a viewer suggested topic. I'm always looking for ideas, things you want me to talk about. I talk about writing and the writing process and that kind of thing. So if you have any more ideas for something that you want to hear me discuss, let me know in the comment below. Anyway, thank you for watching. Goodbye.